A leaked patent from Sony revealed a major change to the PS5. Did Xbox just hand Sony its biggest W yet? There's a new special edition PS5. I'm running solo for this edition of PlayStation News. The first thing I want to talk about is the review scores for Jedi Survivor. I know that everyone, myself included, was kind of just expecting this game to get massively great reviews. I mean, look at Respawn's history with how great their games are, but there's always a chance that it could come out and get terrible reviews or something like that. So you can rest assured it got great reviews across the board. It got like all 8s, 9s, some 10s. It looks awesome. Basically, every review can be summed up as it takes everything that was introduced in the first Jedi game and then makes it a little bit or a lot better. The only thing that they took and seemed to make a little worse from the first Jedi game, though, is the performance. No matter whether people were playing this game on PS5, Series X, PC, it doesn't matter. The performance was lacking across the board, and a big reason for that is that it's coming in really hot. They said that there's like 60 gigabytes of data on the disc if you buy this game at the store, and then you need to download the rest of the data, which gets the game to over like 150 gigabytes. So yeah, they are really getting close to the finish line here with this game when it's releasing. It makes me curious what state this game would have launched in if it kept its original release date. Regardless, I'm glad it got delayed. I would have been happier if it got delayed and was actually finished, because it's still looking like this game is coming in a little hot, but because it's Star Wars, because it's Jedi, because the game is just that good, people are just overlooking the performance issues, which is exactly what I'm going to do. I saw on PlayStation's website as well that it has adaptive triggers and haptic feedback support, so if you're playing it on PS5, it should be a pretty awesome experience. So yeah, it comes out. By the time you see this video, it's already out. I hope you're enjoying it. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. All right, next up, let's talk about the PS5 Gen 2, because we just had our first truly official look at the console. So up until now, everything we've heard about this console has been from leakers like Tom Henderson over at Insider Gaming, amongst other people. What we had heard up until this point is that this new model of the PlayStation 5 isn't really going to be like the PS4 Slim or PS3 Slim, where they make it cheaper on the inside and outside and then ride that out through the rest of the generation. That this is more of like a recalibration of how they actually make the PS5 to make it cheaper overall for Sony. What I mean by that is that the way it works right now is that there's two assembly lines for the PS5. They have a full-on SKU that's just the digital edition, and then they have the disc edition, which is a completely different model. It's got the attached disc drive and it uses completely different plates. The way it's going to work in the future is that we're going to have one PS5. Every PS5 off the belt is going to be a digital edition, and then after that PS5 is built, they're going to take probably half or 75% of them, put them off to the side, and then develop a new disc drive that can be attached to the side of the PlayStation. This video is sponsored by War Thunder. War Thunder is one of the most comprehensive vehicle combat games ever made. You can choose from a collection of vehicles that span over 100 years of warfare, going from 1920s all the way up until today. Whether you want to fight in air, land, or sea, you can play it now on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and last generation consoles. If you're playing on PS5, they have a system called Mouse Aim that lets you pilot any plane without any extra hardware. You can also armor up and choose different vehicles from 10 different countries like Germany, the USSR, France, Japan, and of course the USA. Light tanks, heavy tanks, and much more are all included in the game. It's got great graphics and it runs at 4K resolution, and it also includes incredible effects like fire, smoke, sound effects of things blowing up and destruction. It's really cool. If you want to try War Thunder today, you can download it now for PlayStation, PC, and Xbox, and if you use my link in the description, you'll get a larger free bonus pack including premium vehicles, premium account, boosters, and more. Now, again, like I mentioned, everything we had heard up until this point was rumors about that. We didn't know if it was actually true, but Sony has just patented a detachable disc drive for the PS5. Now, the patent has a crazy title. It's the US 202-301-181-86-1A_I, and it's described as an optical disc drive that can be mounted in electronic equipment such as a game machine, personal computer, or AV equipment. So if this happened at like any other time, we'd be like, is this for a PS5? Is this for like a Blu-ray player? Is this for like the PS5 Pro? What exactly is going on? But like, we have so many leaks that basically say what's going to happen with the PS5 Gen 2, as it's being called. It's pretty obvious that this is related to the PS5. Regardless, speaking of all these leaks, I'm more excited for the PS5 Pro. Tom Henderson kind of like baited this one and it totally worked. He was like, I've heard more about the PS6 than the PS5 Pro. Is anyone going to tell me anything about the PS5 Pro? And then we got the rumors that yes, it is real and it's coming next year. but that this Gen 2 PS5 is going to come out this year. So when you see this thing announced, if you just got a PS5, maybe hang on and wait and see if they tease or at least reveal or something related like comes out of Sony to the PS5 Pro, because I think that's what's really going to be worth paying attention to if you already have a PS5. If you don't have a PS5, I mean, at this point, you might just want to wait for this PS5 Gen 2 just to see what it is. And then if it's not anything crazy over the launch PS5, maybe get one of those used, or look at all these scalpers who are selling them for less than MSRP. But regardless, some really cool things are on the horizon with Sony's hardware, and it's nice to see them officially acknowledging a detachable disk drive. It's honestly a really cool thing that I never thought would happen. Sony has finally listened. They're doing what I've been asking for months. They're giving us custom PS5 plates that are tied into actual games. Now, a couple months ago, they did announce this LeBron edition PlayStation 5 that had its own custom plates and its own DualSense. They didn't give us a release date, and we have heard nothing about this since, but people were not very excited about it because all we've been asking for since the PS5 came out was special plates that we could put on our PS5 that are themed around games. And if you live in Japan, that is what you're getting with Final Fantasy 16. Now, regardless, there's a new PS5 bundle here in America that's coming out on June 22nd, and you can start pre-ordering it on May 4th. It'll come along with a code for Final Fantasy 16, even though it's going to be a disc edition of the PlayStation 5. I hate that Sony does that, but it's a cool way to get a game with your PlayStation 5 in the box. I would personally go with the God of War Ragnarok bundle because that game is verified awesome, and just like with that bundle, you're not getting the sweet DualSense that they've made for Final Fantasy 16 with this bundle. And if you want to know what that DualSense looks like, you're going to be able to get it in the United States. The touchpad has a really elaborate design on it that looks like constellations or all of the different summons you'll be able to turn into in this game, which is really cool. And then the handles have their own really cool gold design on them. I like that, just like with the Hogwarts Legacy version of the DualSense, this is a matte black controller all the way around with gold and turquoise accents. I think that looks great. And if you live in Japan, you're going to be able to get a bundle that comes with a PlayStation 5, this awesome custom DualSense, and faceplates that go with the console that look like Final Fantasy 16 edition as well. That has the really cool gold design from the game's box art, and I really hope that we're able to get this in the United States because it's matte black as well, and it just looks awesome. The only thing I can think of is that maybe they want to make this a huge marketing thing here in the States when they release the PS5 Gen 2. They're going to say, hey, just like Microsoft is doing with their design lab where you can get 5 custom edition versions of Redfall controllers, we're going to start having our own design lab where you can make your own plates for this new PS5 Gen 2 that they're going to use for the rest of the generation. It's just really cool to see Sony finally listening, not only bundling up the PS5 with games, but they're also bundling it with cool controllers and cool plates. I just wish they would do this in the United States, but hopefully this is just a great sign of things to come. Next up, let's talk about this Activision Blizzard King versus Sony and the US government and the UK government deal that everyone just wants to wrap up, and it looks like things might finally wrap up in a positive way for Sony, which is crazy and kind of unexpected. So basically, the UK's CMA, the Country Music Awards, I don't know what it actually stands for, I'm just going to keep making that joke. They're saying that because Xbox has such a stronghold in cloud gaming due to Stadia failing, they'll have too much of a lead over Sony if they are able to get Activision, and there will be too much of an incentive for them to not release games on PlayStation. Now, Activision's response to this is crazy. Their public response is like saying that the UK is closed for business, like they are going hard because they really want to be bought. And Bobby Kotick sent an email internally to everyone at Activision. He said basically like, look, if this deal doesn't go through, that's fine. We'll be like, what, $3 billion richer, and we'll work on this on our own, and we'll still release games. Now, I kind of wish this would go through in the long term for one big reason, and that's that I was excited to see what Activision could do with other games than Call of Duty, because if Activision does not get bought by Microsoft, it's just going to go right back to how it was, where the only thing all these great studios like Raven are working on is Call of Duty. In perpetuity, forever, it's just going to be Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty, and I would like to see more hexing games. I'd like to see another Singularity. I'd like to see another Sekiro or something like that. Like any of these Activision games that aren't Call of Duty. The thing I really want personally is this deal to just be over because it affects PlayStation. I think it's a big reason why we haven't seen a showcase is that PlayStation doesn't want to come out with this banger showcase where they've got a bunch of third-party games that they bought exclusivity on and they're helping develop, because that's been a huge response from Microsoft saying, look, Sony buys all these exclusives and we can't buy Activision Blizzard to compete with them. Like, what's the deal with that? So if Sony has this big showcase where it's like, quote, going to blow your with all these crazy new deals that they've made. I can see why they would want to hold that back until this deal is over. But the outcome now looks like Microsoft's going to appeal. But if you're trying to save some money, you're going to wait for some of those performance patches that EA is promising to release for Jedi Survivor. Happy to let you know that May so far for PS Plus Essential is looking pretty good. So last month we had Meet Your Maker, which people are actually really enjoying. It's a brand new game coming to PS Plus. So if you haven't at least added that to your collection, you should go do so along with all the other Essential games. But this month we're getting Grid Legends, Chivalry 2, and Descenders. Now Grid Legends is a new racing game from Codemasters. I think they're owned by EA now, but I don't think this game was made under their EA ownership. It's trying to add like a Need for Speed style story into a grid game. I looked up reviews of it and they're pretty solid across the board. They're like nothing amazing. I've always liked Grid. The original one was pretty good. So if you're into racing games, I think this one is definitely worth checking out. It's one that I've like looked at and wanted to buy, but never have because it's always just been a little too expensive. So I'm actually excited to get this one for free. Chivalry 2 is one of Ray's favorite games. He plays it on Xbox. He plays it on PC. It's basically like a third-person knight combat game that's all online. You have awesome combat where you can cut off people's limbs, throw swords. It just looks like a lot of fun when he's playing it at the office on Xbox Cloud Streaming. He said that he's been playing it with keyboard and mouse lately though, and it's just made him a complete god at this game. I've never tried it. I own it, but having it on PlayStation 5 will definitely get me to try it out because Ray has been talking about this game for over a year, I think, at this point, and he absolutely loves it. So I'm giving it the Ray endorsement here on PSReady. And then finally, Descenders looks really cool. It's a mountain bike racing game where you're just flying downhill. It was like an alternative to Riders Republic back when Ubisoft was talking about releasing that, and that came out and had some issues and people weren't in love with it really. This was the game that they were playing instead. It's kind of cheap. It's like an indie game, but it looks really cool. So yeah, I'm going to give this month a solid Jim approval on PS Plus Essentials games. Next up, we got to talk about the PSVR 2 real quick because one of the biggest barriers for this thing, I think, is that people aren't able to experience it in any way in an actual store. Up until now, it's only been available from PlayStation Direct, and there is no worse way to get someone excited about VR than by showing them a video of a game being played on it. You need to at least see the hardware, hold the controllers, see the headset, maybe even put it on, be able to play to really understand why VR is so awesome. And that's why it's good that starting soon, Sony says, you'll be able to get the PSVR 2 at any retailer that you would get the PS5 at. Best Buy, Target, even Amazon are all going to probably start stocking this thing soon. I still really like the PSVR 2. The game's kind of dried up pretty quick for it, but the stuff that came out at launch was worth playing at least for a little while. I mean, Resident Evil Village alone was worth checking out in VR. And of course, I love Pavlov. I'd also love if they'd go back and update some games that had VR modes, like Star Wars Squadrons, for example. I played that whole game back in VR when it came out, and it was awesome to experience Star Wars space dogfighting in VR. I wish they would update that game because it actually sold really well. It was one of those games where like EA said, hey, this isn't going to be a live service. It's going to get a few content drops maybe, but then that'll be it. And it was like a really good multiplayer experience. So I really wish that game had some sort of live aspect to it. So yeah, this is good news all around for the PSVR 2. Apparently that news we heard a couple weeks ago where people said, oh, it only sold 270,000 units in the first month or so on the market. That was skewed, and it was actually a positive amount of them to sell. Obviously, Sony would like these things to be sold in the millions, but for that to happen, they've got to start releasing more games for the PSVR 2. Thankfully, there are quite a few on the horizon, and this thing is going to be available in stores, which is all positive news if you ask me. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. If you want to try one of the biggest vehicle combat games ever made, click my link in the description and sign up now to play it on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and last gen console. Oh, and don't forget to grab that free bonus pack.